Okay, let's start. Any questions? Any question concern regarding the midterm exam?
Sir, I have a question from the lecture 15 that you had uploaded.
Yeah.
One identity that you had shown was the Christoffel symbol in terms of the determinant of the metric.
Yeah.
So there I noticed that on the right hand side there is only one index, which is A, but the Christoffel symbol is, it also has B and C. So
But that is a contracted Christoffel symbol.
but I
Let,
don't see any contraction in the first entity. Like second one is fine, but the first one
let
there's
me see.
something missing.
There might be some typo. 15, is it? Okay.
Yes.
So the first, do you see it on the screen or no?
Not yet, sir.
Okay. Can you see it now?
Yes, sir. The first one.
Yeah, first one, B and B are same. So it is contracted.
Oh, okay. I thought it is C. Okay.
No, here,
Okay, I got it.
okay, let's continue. Today, I'm going to cover some minor things which we have seen geometric aspects of uh, Riemann space. We have seen the Riemann curvature. We have seen Ricci tensor and so on. So, how does that finally connects to the physics which we are doing? So, the one side we have a Einstein tensor that which has a diverging vanishing divergence. That is all fine. So eventually it led to derivation of Einstein's equation. Einstein's equation was not per se derived by Einstein. He just produced it. Uh, on the other hand, it is very same kind of an approach. How did the Newton's equation of motion came and so on. So once these equations were there, we can do a lot of postmortem and try to understand. That is what we do. So one thing we definitely know is that the metric itself corresponds to the geodesic motion or equation of motion, and that also can be matched with the Newton's second law of motion. Now it is a more serious affair here. Now we have a metric which is a function of coordinate, and then we say that that represents the gravity. So to map it back to Newton's gravity, we need to do some approximation, which we call linearization. It is actually much more than linearization. We throw out a lot of terms because in principle, the gravity theory should match with the Newton's theory when the speed of light is very small and mass density is not very large. So it should match with our day-to-day well-behaved Newtonian gravity. So the idea here is to approximate and see what happens, whether we can really match it with the Newtonian gravity. Also, it leads to a lot of good insight into what this Ricci tensor and Einstein tensor actually means. So let's start with the simple first approximation. Let's start with the metric. Let's start with the metric, which is approximated in the following way. So we take G00 dt square minus dr square minus r square d theta square minus r square sine square theta d phi square. So this is a metric, Minkowskian metric. On the spatial side, it is a spherical polar coordinate system, and G00 is only assumed, and the rest of them are assumed to be constants. So that that is an approximation. You cannot have a metric or space-time like this, but under some approximation it can be done. So we assume that the G00 also can be written as a 1 plus some H00. So the 1 is needed because otherwise if H becomes 0, then whole thing is going to crash down. So we can also assume H00 to be very, very small, such that we can approximate it to the first order, where we can ignore all the terms H00 square order. So the approximation is always a bit tricky business. You would find that it is much easier to do a full calculation, while the approximation often tends to, you keep track of the order and all that thing have to be done. However, the first order approximation always can be neatly done. It is much simpler, while going beyond from first order is actually a big mess. So let's stick to the first order. That means whenever terms of the type H00 square comes in, we simply set that to 0. So that is our understanding. So let us try to do an equation of motion for corresponding metric and see what kind of an equation of motion we would get. So this is a goal, and try to see whether we can relate it to Newtonian gravity, equation of motion, or a Kepler problem.
Sir?
Yeah.
Why are we only considering G00 and taking the other coefficients to be constants for the other variables?
Okay. So the idea is that we got to match it with the Newton's gravity. Anything which we do more than this, we find that there is going to be correction. See what happens. There are various levels of approximation going to happen here. First, you could have a velocity of light could be, velocity of particle could be very large. For example, you could have a system in which, let's say, Mercury. Okay, Mercury is what happens? The velocity is much larger compared to the rest of the planet, so it experiences some minor changes. even that we don't want to include, right? For example, Earth. Earth is far away from the sun. For Earth, V by C is about 10 to the power minus 4. Now, that is a case where it is purely Newtonian. Now, if the velocity of V by C is become 10 to the power minus 3 or minus 2, then relativistic effects start to come in. So that we want to avoid, and the best way to avoid is, and to match it with the Newtonian theory, is just taking a G00 as a function of coordinate. And you would also see that this would be understood from the classical or Newtonian Lagrangian to have how to relate to the potential. Okay, we will see at the end of this derivation that anything more you add would only deviate from the Newtonian approximation. Okay, that would have a higher correction that we want to avoid.
Okay, sir.
So let us take this and let's try to do an equation of motion. Let's write the Lagrangian. Lagrangian is given as L is equal to, let's put this half, simply, otherwise it is get messed up, R dot square and R square theta dot square minus R square sine square theta. So we are not trying to prove some great thing. So let us not worry too much complicating our life. Let's approximate, not approximate. Let's take theta is equal to pi by 2 and theta dot is equal to 0 and theta double dot is equal to 0. So another way is to say that this thing, if the G00 is a function of R only, then you will have the spherical symmetry, and the equatorial plane is good enough to describe the full system. All you have to do is later rotate it. So we are not losing anything by taking this approximation, and then we can get the equation of motion. So what we have here, let's do it a little bit more carefully. You would need this. The first is conserved quantity is G00 T dot is equal to E. That is the first equation, or it implies that T dot is equal to E by G00. Okay. And the second equation is a conservation of angular momentum. That would be R square phi dot is equal to Lz. That is a z component of angular momentum. And this implies phi dot is equal to Lz by R square. Okay. Now we have to use the next conserved quantity, which is a Lagrangian itself. Now you see that you can write this as a whole thing to be 1, Lagrangian to be 1. Then you have 2 is equal to G00 T dot square minus R dot square into R square phi dot square. You have already phi dot and T dot known in terms of constant that you can substitute. So you left with the E squared by G00 minus R dot square minus Lz square by R square. So this is simply substituting this, substituting this here and this here. Okay, so then you play around with this. All you get is
Sir, can you repeat where did you get the first two equations? The G0 T dot and R square phi dot.
this equation.
Yes, sir.
No, that is the first of the conserved quantity. So we you see that the first equation what we have is dl by dt is equal to 0. So this leads to dl by dt dot is equal to constant, and that I call it as a E, that is energy. And then you substitute that, what you get is a G00 T dot is equal to E. So that is the first equation. Okay. Now let's jump to the last equation, that is dl by d phi also equal to 0.
So there should be a 1 by 2 term before the expression, right?
1 by 2. Where, no, there is a t square, right? T square and half would cancel. The t square would have a 2. You differentiate with t dot, right? We have t dot square. And that,
Oh, right. No, sir, I'm talking in the Lagrangian that you've rewritten.
here, did I make some mistake? Let me see.
Like you've written L is equal to G00. Like there, it's fine there in the green one, but in the blue one, like
Here.
yes. Don't you think there should be half?
Yeah, no, let me come to that. Let me finish this, okay?
Yes, sir.
So the next equation is dl by d phi dot is equal to constant, which I call as Lz, and this would simply lead to this gives me this equation, and these two gives this equation. Okay. Now I say that here, let's come back to here. So I say that of course, whichever way you can take L to be 1, or you can take L to be half. So I have taken L to be 1 here, which depending on whatever way, it's a constant. It doesn't matter. You can call it a half or you can call it 1. Whole thing will change. Equation of motion would have either 2 or 1. So let's see whether there is a consistency problem. I call this Lagrangian to be 1. Okay. Then I take that 2 to the other side. So then it becomes 2, and then half goes away because I have taken the 1 here, and then r dot. Yeah, this is fine. Do you still see the inconsistency?
Sir, your 2 sort of looks like L. So.
Oh, okay, okay. That is a scripting font problem. Okay. So you have r dot square is equal to E square minus G00 minus Lz square r square minus 2. Okay, so I've just rewritten. So this is the 3 equation of motion we have. Fourth one is not needed because theta dot is we have already assumed. So the first one is a t evolution, phi evolution, and a r evolution. That completes the problem in principle. So this you can also see that if you look at the what is that book, Goldstein, you would see that this is used to write the effective potential. We will come back to effective potential. Let's do something else. Let's try to do a Kepler problem. What is a Kepler problem? Kepler problem is a classical Lagrangian system in which V is equal to minus K by R. Okay, the potential. That means the potential depends only on the R, and your K could be G, M, whatever, to identify it with the central mass. So we can leave it, just say it K times K by R, minus because it is have to be attractive potential. So the Lagrangian corresponding to this, now T is not part of it, it is all T dot. So you can see that R, now it is plus again. I have there I have used negative, but those should not be a problem to get the interpretation. R square plus R square sine square theta phi dot square. Now here comes the plus k by r. You are familiar with this Lagrangian? Have you done it? I believe you have not done the central force problem. That is the reason I will just repeat this part, but it is, see that it is very similar to what we have done, except that there is no time here, and then the potential is extra sitting there. So again, without loss of generality, let's take theta to be pi by 2, and theta dot to be 0, and theta double dot to be 0. So the equation of motion, again we got to use all our conserved quantity. The first one is Lz is conserved. There is a reason I am jumping for Lz, because that's the simplest one. So that is equal to Lz. So it is constant. So that what we have here, okay, I am missing a half here, I think. Okay, does this make sense now? The kinetic energy minus potential energy is what your classical Lagrangian. Potential is minus k by r. Kinetic energy should have a half there. So I missed that. So we have a r square phi dot is equal to Lz. So this is the same thing we are getting. So we have this implies phi dot is equal to Lz by r square. Now what do? We need a few more conserved quantity. What shall we use? Theta dot is not gone. This we have assumed 0. So we have energy is conserved. Here don't go with the earlier energy. That's different than this. Energy is a kinetic energy plus potential energy. Okay, so it is not the Lagrangian. We have done earlier, Lagrangian itself is conserved because there is no potential. It is actually Hamiltonian which is conserved, or a total energy which is conserved, which is a kinetic energy plus potential energy, not just the Lagrangian itself. So we cannot say the Lagrangian is conserved here, but we have a same term coming with the one extra minus sign here than Lagrangian. We don't have to write theta dot term. R square phi dot square. Then we have now minus k by r, okay, or kappa by r. This is a conserved quantity. So let's play around with this. You have multiplied by 2e, then plus k by r, okay, then that is equal to r dot square plus r square phi dot square. So this is what you have. Again, you can substitute. R dot square remains same. Other one becomes r dot square plus L z square by r square. Now we can
Sir,
yeah,
sir, it will be 2k by r, right?
there is a
Means 2e plus 2k by r, right?
yeah 2 is there, because half comes only with the kinetic energy, not with the this. So let me go ahead and complete this. Okay, so we get a r dot equation, which is r dot square is equal to 2e plus 2k by r. Then you have a minus Lz square by r square. So this is your equation of motion. Now let's compare the two equation of motion here. Of course, there is some differences you would see, but that is a reason one can cast them exactly equal, but that's not the point. As long as you are able to get the analogy between the two, I would be happy. It is not just about matching these two. Now these two equation would look fairly similar, and then let us remind ourselves that we have made an understanding that G00 is equal to 1 plus H00, and 1 by G00 can be written as 1 minus G00. Okay, putting all it together, what we get here by comparing these two, ignore the constant because you see that this r dot and t dot cannot be compared, in the sense that here r dot means that dr by dt, and here r dot means that dr by ds, but we can convert it. We can write it as a r dot as a dr by dt into dt by ds, and then we can we know already what is this, so we can have a r dot we can write it as a dr by dt into t dot. So we can do all that, but that is algebra which already get murky and all that thing, but one can exactly do it, but I am not interested to show you all things so exactly. But what do we get here? Understanding is that the G00 is actually corresponding to your 1 plus 2 phi, where phi is equal to k by r minus of this. Okay, so that is a Newtonian potential. So now you see that this is how we understand that the G00 term, if you approximate it to the only term which is surviving, then you can kind of get a Newtonian equation of motion in the central force problem or the Kepler problem. Now, since we have looked at the Kepler problem, let me just give you a sidetrack here a little bit and talk about the Kepler problem just for a minute. So here, look at okay, let's take this equation and see. This is the only equation which is remaining, okay, in the Kepler problem. That is which we need to solve. Something very interesting happens here. So let us look at this. This is an R equation. You can actually do a second derivative of this. That is actually, you can differentiate it one, or rather you can do it r dot r double dot would give you 2 into r dot square, no, not 2, half into r dot square d by dt, something like that you can write, and then divide by r dot and all the tricks you can play. But what interest here is that this is a R equation which is written in terms of potential. So E is constant. Let's not worry about it. You can set E to be half, then let's put it 1. So that doesn't matter. So that is a energy corresponding to one-dimensional effective equation of motion. So this equation is called the one-dimensional 1D effective equation of motion. Okay, so only R is there, nothing else. Everything has been removed. And then you see there are two terms here. One is potential, 1 by R, corresponding to the gravity. And then there is a 1 by R square. So these two are the competing forces which are giving you the equation of motion. So what actually happens in the effective radial equation of motion? You have two potential competing with each other. One is your gravitational potential, which is goes as a 1 by r, minus 1 by r. Okay, you can pull that out and write it as effective potential. So it is actually E. So you can write it as a minus 2k by r minus L plus Lz squared by r squared. So you can write it. So this is 1 by r potential, minus 1 by r potential. Now let us look at the other one. This goes like this. This is 1 by r square minus 1 by plus 1 by r square potential. Okay. So this is minus, oh, I'm mixing up with all colors. So this is minus 1 by r. This is a plus 1 by r square. Now you see that these two potential, what effective potential you get is a sum of these two, and that is what which matters would have a minima like this, and then it goes to 0 at infinity. So you have a circular orbit here when the effective potential attains the minima. So that is what you have is a circular orbit. R dot is equal to 0 can be obtained, and then that is a circular orbit. So you can show that in the Newtonian gravity or Kepler problem, you always have a minima throughout. This situation is not going to change. You can pick various Lz values. You can pick various, that is the only parameter you have. But by choosing Lz, you are either moving it this way or this way, but potential is going to have a minima always, and then that is always going to be stable. You might have heard that the circular orbit are stable only in two potentials. That is V of r is equal to 1 by r minus, and V of r is equal to r square. Okay, so these two are the potential in which there exists a stable circular point at every point in the space, and not only circular orbit, they are stable circular orbit. Now it is interesting to see that if the equivalence principle, which dictates the connection between the gravity and the centrifugal force, the centrifugal force can be written with the potential omega square r square, and the gravity can be written with the potential 1 by r. So you see that there is again a coincidence that these two gives the stable potentials, and then that is what give rise to an overall stable system for the circular orbits in the case of Kepler problem. In GR, it does not happen because the effective potential, you can, this is approximate. If you write down the exact effective potential, then it would not simply match with the exact Newtonian potential. There are some correction terms coming, so that leads to the instability in the circular orbit at some point in the space. Okay, any questions so far?
Sir, that second V of r is r square, right? Not 1 by r square.
No, r square would go like this.
Yeah, no, but you wrote V of r is equal to r square.
This one. Yeah, no, that is r square. That
Right,
is
that's
not this. That is not this. There are two, harmonic potential and gravitational potential. these two have a stable circular orbit at every point in the every r. So that is one of the very powerful theorem. You can look at the proof of that in the Goldstein book. But a simple way of doing it is through the effective potential. You can show that this has always has a minima no matter what you do. Okay, so this is one way of connecting between the geometric idea of how the component of the metric comes in terms of your Newtonian potential, but one need to do little more serious stuff to show that the Einstein equations, which we have not talked, which I have not given you, actually corresponds to the Newtonian gravity. So that need to do is to, let's try to see some bit to do it. So let's again look at the metric which written like this. You know, relativists are a bit of slimy creatures. They use that the full freedom of GR which says that your physics is independent of coordinate system you use. So you should be always using the coordinate system simple enough to do your calculations. Now for the calculation which we are doing now is involve computing the Ricci tensor and so on. So that would become extremely, not extremely, it becomes a little bit of long and confusing if you use the spherical polar coordinate system. Instead of that, let's use the Cartesian coordinate system and use the same approximation, only G00 is a function of x. Now we also know that it should be 2 phi. So that also we can do. Phi is a function of x, y, z, and rest is your metric. Now you see that you have to compute this metric is given by 1 plus 2 phi and 0, 0, 0 and 0, minus 1, 0, 0. This all messy stuff. Minus 1, 0, 0, 0, 0, minus 1. Okay. Now my question is, what would be the upper index? Can somebody tell what would be this?
It would be 1 by 1 plus 2 phi. It would be
1
diagonal
minus 2
matrix.
phi. Would be
Yeah,
1
yeah.
minus 2 phi.
This should be 1 minus 2 phi because we have already assumed phi is too small, and 1 by 1, what is that? 1 by 1 plus 2 phi becomes 1 minus 2 phi. It is you might have come across this kind of things in your rest is all minus 1. So there is no this thing. So you might have come across this even in the angular momentum algebra, wherever in the quantum mechanics, perturbation theory and all that thing. So you see that when you do 1 by G00, that is what would be the upper 1 by G0, that would be 1 plus 2 phi. Now you approximate it to the first order in phi. This would simply give 1 minus 2 phi. Okay. So that is expansion which you are doing. Let's also do a simple mathematics. G00 into G00, this should be 1 plus 2 phi minus 2 phi and then some phi order of phi square. So this we are ignoring, phi square term. So these two cancel. So this is equal to 1. So this is all we will be doing throughout this, that whenever do the first order approximation, so the higher order term would cancel out. We keep only phi term. Phi square would be always 0. Under that, inverse would be simply 1 minus 2 phi. So this is where we have simplification happens. Now I will be making you suffer through to calculate gammas. You already know how to do gamma A, B, C. But you see, the point is that when you do this gamma substituting this and all this thing, it is a bit of cumbersome expression. So you have to go through all the algebra. That is not necessary. Let's do it symbolically, in the sense that let's write GAB as eta AB plus HAB. Okay. Now we make an approximation. HAB is very, very small. That means that we are ignoring H squared terms. So this is a much stronger approximation than what we have done in our case. But instead of computing the gamma, it is much easier to symbolically compute the gammas here and simply substitute for the G00. And then you find that that is much easier than the actually calculating gamma for the metric given there. So you have to see that it is not sufficient to have this metric alone. We also need gamma A, B upper indices. So how do we know that? How do we do that? We know that the GAB and lower index and upper index have to be inverse of each other, and that is what we have is a delta AP. Now how do we go ahead? We simply substitute this. We assume that we have assumed that this one is equal to HAB, and then we write upper index also in the same fashion, BP plus HBP, and then try to see what is the relation between the upper HAB and lower HAB should give us the complete value of the upper index. So we can do the calculation. It's fairly straightforward. This and this would simply give us delta AP. Is it clear? So this actually a delta AP coming from here. Okay. And then this multiplied by this is a G eta AB, eta BP. They are inverse of each other. It's a Minkowskian metric. And then you will have just simply delta AB. And then you have two terms, which would be eta AB HBP plus HAB eta BP. That's it. H square term we are ignoring, and then we cancel these two because they are delta AP. It doesn't matter. Then we get the identity that the eta AB HBP is equal to minus HAB eta BP. Now we simply multiply it by eta AB. Then we simply get that HQP is equal to minus eta PB eta QA and then HAB. So that means that the lower index and upper index of HAB would have a minus sign. So this implies that the GAB is equal to eta AB minus HAB, where HQP is given as a minus eta PB eta QA HAB. So this is a relation between the covariant and contravariant metric coefficient. Does it make sense?
Sir, how did that
Sir,
eta
can you
BP
explain the product once?
Yeah. So let us start with the, let us do it from the beginning. Let's say that I am using a approximation metric tensor GAB as a Minkowski space plus a small perturbation HAB, which is very, very small. Let HAB amplitude is much smaller than the 1. So that we can ignore HAB square is approximately 0. Now what we need to do is we also need to compute upper indices of a GAB. Now common sense tells that it is the inverse. Inverse we have already seen that if it were a number, then you could have simply written as we have done for G00 component, we would have simply got the minus sign there. Okay. The same minus sign, we are now trying to get it through the full tensorial algebra, that the inverse is nothing but a minus sign which is with the raised indices. That is the idea here. So let's multiply this A, B, let us say B, P. So this is the condition which we have between the two. So this has to be A, P. So this is the condition for inverse metric. Now we start with G, A, B. Okay? No, not G. H, A, B. Oh, not even H. So eta A, B plus H, A, B. Okay? For your convenience, I am not assuming now the form of this thing at all. I am just using a BP. Okay, so that is what let's do. Now, let us say that delta AP is, we got to do this GAB into GB P plus, oh, I have again made a mistake here. This should be H, okay? So HAB into GBP, okay? Now you see that we have the two upper component. If the lower can be approximated as some small quantity, then the upper also should be able to written in terms of a small quantity. Let's write GBP as eta BP plus, let us not call it a H itself, let's call it something else. Let's call it a capital H. That's a new invention. Okay, so this with the understanding that the HBP magnitude is very, very small, and then you can ignore HBP square order to be 0. In addition, you can also ignore HBP into HAB also equal to 0. They are all in the first order. Now, if we do substitute here, let me change my color. AB is equal to eta AB into eta BP plus HBP okay, plus HAB into eta BP plus HAB BP. Now you multiply this and this going to give you delta AB because they are inverse of each other. That is eta AB, eta BP is going to give me delta AP. That is because they are inverse. Then I get a term HAB, HBP. Then I get a term here HAB and HBP. And then the last term is going to be 0 because of our approximation. Is this okay, this step from up to down? The first, because upper and lower Minkowskian metric is inverse of each other. Second, all other terms are remaining same except the last one, which goes to 0 because of the approximation of linearity. Okay, now here we also have delta AP coming from the original metric. These two cancels out, and then we have a AB HBP is equal to HAB HBP. Now I multiply by both sides by BQ. Okay, I multiply both sides by eta BQ. Okay. Now this simply would becomes B becomes Q, so PQ here symmetric, it doesn't matter. Now HAB eta B. Oh, did I mess up some index?
There will be a minus sign.
Yeah, there is a minus sign here. Other than that, there is a mismatch. Somewhere index is messed up. A, B, B, P. There is a BQ. What is that? No, I have to multiply by AQ, okay? Not BQ. So this has to be AQ. So then the first term A, and then that becomes a delta. Here what happens? A, B, then this becomes a AQ. So this in terms become a delta BQ, and then that B get replaced by Q, and that is why you have a H of BQ. And here there is nothing complications. It is all straightforward. So you have a BP and eta AQ. So this is what about it. So essentially that means we have written upper GAB as eta AB plus HAB, HAB, where HAB symbolically given by, this is given by minus HAB into BP and eta AQ. Okay, so this is what it means.
Sir, I think the HAB, the small HAB should be a dummy index.
Here, no, here, right?
The last one.
Yeah, last one. It should be not AB, it should be PQ. Okay, so that is the same thing. So to not introduce another variable just like that, so we simply understand it by writing HAB minus HAB, where our HAB upper one picks up a minus sign from the lower one after raising it. So this is what essentially it means, they're taking the inverse.
Sir,
Yeah.
in the second line, you have delta QB multiplied with HBP, right?
Yeah.
So shouldn't it be QP?
Let
We have written PQ.
No, let me. Yes, you are correct. But here I think some of the things have come in, both carefulness and carelessness has both combined here. Carelessness because I am making a show of myself that I am a careless. Carefulness because it is already gone in my mind that HAB is a symmetric tensor, right? So I am again and again not worried in which order I am actually writing it. So you are correct, but I am also correct in the sense that I am not too much worried about the indices in which order written, because HAB have to be symmetric, otherwise whole thing will collapse. Is that what you are asking?
Yes, sir. I mean, if HAB is symmetric, then capital H is also symmetric.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think.
No, all throughout it is everything is here symmetric, because otherwise metric will not be symmetric. So both upper and lower indices of metric have to be symmetric. So that is what somehow built into it. In principle, it is wrong thing to do for an arbitrary vector, but here somehow it has gone into the mind that it is symmetric already, so I am ignoring that. So let us write that as I have noticed it, and I have also hoped that somebody would ask for it. So here we go. So we write it like a QP. Okay. Okay, so this comes under what is called is the linearizing the theory of gravity, and that is what gives a good understanding of what is happening to the Riemann curvature and so on. So you could see that we are doing a very long algebra. So let us take a 5 minutes break, and maybe 10 minutes, 5 minutes break, and come back. We will proceed with this calculation at 12:05. Okay.
Sir, can you go to the slide of that when you started using the small h ones?
The previous ones, this one, or in the previous page, I just did a quick calculation.
Yes, sir. Previous page, sir, where you started using small h.
Yeah, can you see it? This is a one. Okay, let's start. Any questions? So far, let's summarize. What we are doing is linearizing the linear approximation of the geometry. So what we have is a GAB, which is written as eta AB plus HAB, and then upper index is written as GAB is equal to eta AB minus HAB. With the proper things kept in mind, what we are going to do. So HAB is a very small, and we are ignoring HAB square is to be 0. Now next step is fairly straightforward, but it is a bit of a writing. So we are going to compute gamma ABC. So the expression we get is from straightforward. We have a GAP and then differentiation of BGPC plus differentiation of C with the GBP minus differentiation of P with the GPC. Now we substitute our approximate form, and we get here half into G, not G, eta AP minus HAP, then go square bracket, and here we have a bit of a messy equations. G is not G, eta PC plus HPC, and so on. Differentiation with respect to C, and then eta PB plus HPB, and then minus GP into HBC plus HBC. Okay. Now you see that the differentiation or the gamma corresponding to the Minkowski space is 0. So this is going out, this is going out, this is going out. Okay. Now look at outside what happens. Outside we have two terms. One is eta AB get multiplied by all these terms inside the square bracket, and then HAB getting multiplied by all the terms inside. But that is going to be second order. For example, first term is going to be minus P HAP into DBH into HPC. So as per our approximation, this is approximately 0. So what we left out here is simply half eta AP into differentiation of H with respect to B, PC plus differentiation of HPB with the C minus differentiation of HBC with the P. So this is what we have is a gamma ABC. Okay, so this is the expression which we get for the gamma in terms of this approximation. So in the lowest order it is 0 because it is a flat space time. Is this step clear? There is nothing much here. It is a fairly straightforward. Is it okay? Yes? Is it okay or no? Some questions?
Sir, can you repeat how you cancelled eta?
Eta is constant, right? You mean to that this one here?
Yes, all the three eta.
Yeah, that is eta is constant. Eta is -1. No, eta is 1 minus 1 minus 1 minus 1. So differentiation of that is 0. So that is not cancels out. It is just 0.
Okay.
So the main is approximation. There is not going to be h into derivative of h because that is a higher order. Okay. Next comes is a very, very important aspect. For that, let me write down the Riemann tensor. Let me write down the expression for Riemann tensor. RABCD. It has two terms actually. First one is derivative with respect derivative of gamma AC, and then it is commuted. You are changing the indices, and then two product terms. Now these product terms are notorious. These are the one which gives the nonlinearity to the Riemann curvature in terms of a metric tensor, because you get the G0 derivative of G00 square. So this is why the gravity becomes a nonlinear because of this term. But when we do linearized gravity, we see that our gamma is actually first order in HAB. So that means that when we take the Riemann tensor, this would have a derivative of HAB into derivative of HAB. Okay, so this kind of a term would appear for this and this. So that is not allowed. Under linearization, we have all the terms of h square is going to 0. That means that this term is approximately 0 and this term is approximately 0. That is what we call the linearization. So under linearization, we have only linear terms, that is these two terms. So that is why RAB under linear approximation takes only the term. You can substitute and find out. That would be Donkey's calculation. We directly should be able to see those two terms would simply vanish. They are of the order h square and we are not interested in them. So it would remain only these two. Okay, here where the first time calculation gets simplified, and then we can simply substitute our gammas and then do our calculation. It is just Donkey's algebra again. So you know that the gamma is RABCD is given by GB gamma DAC minus GA gamma DBC. Now let me explicitly write gamma DAC, that is equal to half GDP eta dP into dA HPC plus DC HPA minus GP HAC. Same way we can write down, just to get this neater. Now we have to differentiate this and subtract from one another. The differentiation is fairly straightforward.
Sir,
Yes.
can you go to the previous slide?
Okay. Which one here?
Yes, sir, the previous one. Yes, sir, here. So why those last two terms are zero?
Because you see that
Approximately zero.
look at the gamma term. Okay, gamma term, the lowest order in gamma term is HPC, right? It's derivative actually. That doesn't matter. Derivative is of the same order as HPC itself. Now, when you multiply two gammas, the minimum order would be H squared. There is not going to be a term smaller than H squared. One derivative.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Other derivative. So under linear approximation, that we assume to be 0. And so the entire this term would not have any H order term. It has a minimum term of the order of H squared. So that is why the nonlinear term goes away. Only linear term of Riemann tensor remain. That is what we have here. So then rest is algebra. You differentiate this and subtract. So what we get is a RABCD upper one is equal to half eta dp. Then differentiation A, B, H, P, C plus A, C, B, H, P, A minus B. You could have used the shorthand notation. AC. Okay, one more term minus half, not G, eta dp into GA GB H PC. It is the same term. AC H BP minus A P H B C. Now you see that some similar terms are there, so we get rid of them, especially these two. So we get rid of these two terms, and then we left out with the RABCD, okay, is equal to half eta dp into then all these second derivative terms GC dp HPA minus, yes, HPB plus A H B, what happened? P HBC minus HBP HAC. Okay, so this is the expression for Riemann tensor, which is makes no sense. But anyway, we could use them. I am a bit, my hands are shaky with after writing so much. So let me do something. Let me copy this and simply paste it here. And I want you to see this, what I am doing. Remove this, not there. Okay, here, and simply put it here, and then remove this. Okay, I did some trick. Do you see what I did? Is the step understandable? We have got this expression. I want to bring the D to lower one. This equation is not correct because this, when you bring it down,
There should be a constant.
No, constant will not be there. Where is a constant?
Contraction.
Yeah.
Contraction.
No, there this variable P has to be replaced by D. Okay. So this has to be HDA, and then zooming doesn't help. This has to be D. You can do it explicitly, you know, that I am a bit of lazy now. You just bring the lower my index, you multiply by, let's say, DQ. Okay, multiply by DQ. What I did was multiply by eta DQ to the whole expression, and then I have here dP, that gives me delta QP, and then calling this Q as a D again, and then this is what I would get. Is that okay? Are you able to get the last expression which I did? I'm assuming that you guys are doing this expression parallelly as I am writing, not watching Netflix on other channel.
So right hand side is fine, but on the LHS, if you multiply by eta, does that bring the index of the RD to like below?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. Your question very much appreciated. So the question is this: whether multiplying eta would bring it down. No, it doesn't, right? So let's do a more elaborate calculation here. Our friend's question is valid.
But
Again,
so,
yeah, go ahead.
so here we can multiply that GAB, but
Yeah.
again that the second term that containing H, that will be cancelled due to
Yeah,
that
yeah. That is exactly,
linearization.
that is exactly the answer. So basically you have A, B, C, D. I multiply it by, let's say, Q, D. Okay. So this will bring me down A, B, C, Q. Okay. On the other side, what happens? I write my this one GAB, GQD as eta QD plus HQD, and then contribution from this, it is going because it's all in linear, so only this remains, and that would simply pull it down this. So it is fine. Raising and lowering under linearized theory can be done either by Minkowski metric or with the full metric. It is not going to change. somehow, unless you ask it, I somehow see it, because doing it so many times, it is somehow hardwired. So you have to, that is why you have to keep asking why it is happening. Okay, so under linearized theory, there is a basic principle that the raising and lowering can either be done with the full metric, or it can be done with the Minkowski metric. It is not going to change the situation much. Okay, so we have one last step. This Riemann tensor is a messy, it is difficult to interpret it, and it is easier to use Ricci tensor, which has all the important physics of Riemann tensor, while it is only a second rank symmetric tensor. So to get that, let's contract this with the certain variables, certain indices, and then let's get to business. Okay, so what we should do, we should get a Ricci tensor. So that means we have to contract with these two indices. Okay, let's contract B and D. So I'm not going to do the step again doing with the G, A, B, and so on. I simply contract it. You see it where it convenience to you. So right hand side, it is going to be RAC. Okay, free indices are A and C. So C going to remain here. B is going to be replaced with the D, or D is going to be replaced with the B, whichever way it is okay. So that is not going to cause a problem. So we can essentially multiply by eta BD. So what we have here is, let me write down, what is it? This is B upper and H B A. Okay, because I am multiplying by eta B D to the entire expression here. Okay, so let's not confuse with this. Let's put around here. Okay, now the second term is going to be again A and C is going to remain here, and B and D is going to be contracted, that we call H, where H is equal to eta BD H BD. Okay, so this is next term, and second term again going to be same. It is going to be same as the first one, because it has to be now symmetric with the AC, because we can and the last term is the most interesting one. Maybe I should pull this guy down, not to be so much conjuicy about space. Okay, so this is the expression we have. You see that A and C are symmetric. So this term and this terms are same. Here AC is symmetric, there is a differentiation, and AC partial differentiation anyway is commuting. So there is no problem there. So we are good with this expression. Now, can you identify something here? What does this mean?
Box.
Box. Yes. So this is basically what you call is a box operator or wave operator in 4-dimension. It could be Laplacian in HAC. And then the remaining terms we would write simply like this. There is no meaning to them.
Sir,
Yeah.
how did you get from del B del D of HAC? Then you multiplied by eta BD and then it became del B and then del B of HAC. So B
Because
got contracted.
yeah, contracted. That now our metric is eta AB because GAB has a next term is first order in this. This is already first order in the linear approximation. Eta AB itself is acting like a metric. So that is why you are just getting contracted in the partial differentiation. Anyway, it is a partial differentiation and it is a box operator or what you call is a wave equation for HAB. And this is what we call is a linearized thing. So this one you are asking, right?
Yes, sir. So we use linearization every time we see H multiplied with another H.
Yes, that is the beauty of linearization, right? It is a simplifies. That is why always a approximation or a perturbation is cumbersome because every time order you have to maintain. If you mess up with the order, everything get inconsistent. So you have to maintain first order means first order. There is no second to it. So then you will consistently do it, you get the nice results and everything gets simplified. Of course, second order becomes very messy because it will have lots of term not vanishing and it leads to very messy calculations. But let's not worry, we are not anyway doing second order calculation. So you see that with the linearized equation, Ricci tensor is actually a box operator or wave equation for HAB. The HAB propagates like wave, but of course there are these other messy terms which we will not worry at present. Later, if we get time, we have gravitational waves basically is coming because rest of the term you can set to 0 by using various gauges as we do in the electromagnetism. But that is not our goal. We started with the slightly different goal, that our goal was to see Newtonian approximation. So instead of doing that cumbersome calculation, we end up doing this cumbersome calculation. Okay, so at the end, calculations have to be done. There is no way from it. So this is what it means. Ricci tensor is actually a Laplacian operator and then many more terms. This gives an idea of what essentially your Ricci tensor represent. So it is how it represents the gravity. Now let's get back to, okay, any question here? We will be having one more visit to this when we do this thing, but what we call this is a linearized gravity in which the Ricci tensor can be expressed as a wave equation, and then rest of the term somehow we have to get rid, but we are not doing it now. That is not a part of thing now. Now our goal is to show the Newtonian approximation. So is there any question so far with this equation? Okay, Ricci tensor is also Einstein. It becomes Ricci tensor 0 also means that the vacuum field equation for the gravity that we will do in the main class, not in the this. Now let's apply our rule. What we have in our metric, we have only H00 is not equal to 0. Okay, that is one thing which we have seen. Rest of the HABs are all 0. So that means that this equation would somehow can be simplified further. Let us take R00 equal to 0. That is a condition which we are taking. So this leads to R00 equal to 0 is equal to half. That half can be there. Box H00 minus A is 0 and C is 0, that is H, plus A is 0, then this B will remain, HB 0, and then we have 0, then B, H, B, and 0. So this is what we get. Now this term is 0 because there is a derivative with respect to time is coming. Our assumption was that phi is H00 is a only function of x, y, z, no function of time. So that is going to be 0, and this is also going to be 0 with same reason. This is also going to be 0 with the same reason, because we have assumed that the phi is equal to H00 is the only function of x, y, and z. So any questions? Okay, this leads to the equation 0 is equal to box of H00. Again, we are assuming that the 0 of H00 is 0. That means that this is simply Laplacian. Elsewhere, H00 equal to 0 implies that
Sorry, you're muted.
okay. I have been talking with my mics mute because some noise was coming. Okay, so this means to say that the Laplace equation and the Helmholtz equation, not Helmholtz, Laplace equation and Poisson equation comes as an approximation of Einstein's equation with the suitably taken approximations. So that was the goal of this, to show that the Einstein's equation can eventually be reduced to the Newtonian theory of gravity if you do suitable approximation. So we will look at the exact Einstein's equation. That is, right hand side you have a Einstein tensor, left hand side you have a energy momentum tensor. You can do it same thing. You can get right in terms of the Riemann Ricci tensor. So you have a Ricci tensor and some combination of energy momentum tensor on the other side. All that thing which leads to this equation. And of course, linearized theory, you should always be able to see the presence of gravitational waves. If you are able to get rid of these extra terms, those can be got rid of by taking the suitable gauges. This kind of a trick we do even in the electromagnetism to get the wave equation from the Maxwell's equation. Okay, any questions?
So shouldn't there be a negative sign in front of the box term?
Yeah, there was a negative sign where it is gone. But since you are setting it 0, it is all right. Right? I missed a negative. Where did it go?
Sir, when you
This
first
one.
write the
Yeah, this one, right? I remember a minus sign, but this should have a minus sign here. Okay, so that is coming from this, and then you have all these terms, and then you would see that that would be fine, but this would be positive only because of some flipping of negative size, and you have a box is actually del square t minus del square phi in our case, okay, because we are taking plus minus minus minus. So this eventually leads to the proper sign for the Laplacian equation. Yeah, those are some minor details which you should be able to see, but eventually the goal is to show that it is a Laplace equation which would come out from the Ricci tensor being 0, which is called the vacuum Einstein's equation. Okay, any question or doubt? So it's a bit of a heavy calculation, but linearized theory is not as much of a thing. So you can see that when we do Schwarzschild thing, we'll have to go through the similar thing, but there no linearization, but there are symmetries. But you have done half the calculation already, so it should be fine. Most of the calculations have been done. You know how to do the gammas and so on. So that we will do when the right time comes. Okay, any other questions? Okay, you.
So, sir?
Yeah.
Hello? Does this linearization thing have any implication in quantizing the gravity or things like that?
Okay, the quantizing gravity is a slightly tricky subject. Linearization means what? Linearization means that the gravity here is purely represented by a tensor field in the flat space time. Yeah, maybe can you close your mic because it is firing some sound.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. So you can unmute if you want to ask something later. So what does this linearization means? Originally we have a gravity, which is a complex Riemann geometry, which is a curved space-time. On the other hand, linearization gives you an interpretation that your GAB is given as eta AB plus HAB. I have already told you that in this calculation several times this problem as well as it came out that the HAB is actually can be treated as a tensor on a Minkowskian space. That means it doesn't matter whether you raise and lower with respect to GAB or eta AB in the linear approximation. And also we are using the derivative operator in this case becomes ordinary derivative, partial differentiation. So there is no covariant differentiation here. So this all leads to that interpretation that the HAB is a tensor field in the flat space time. So now that tensor field, whether you can quantize or whether these kind of structures could come because of the quantum gravity and all the thing, there could be one interpretation in that line. But in a true way, there is a differences here. If you understand the field theory, probably you might have come across, it has a slightly different interpretation, which leads to all the problems which we are doing. In the relativity, special theory of relativity, what we are doing, equating the space and time, means that all of them are elevated to the generalized coordinate system. That means both time and space has been upgraded to the generalized coordinate system. While in the field theory, when you say that the space and time given equal weightage, means that all of them have been degraded to a simple parameters in which you take the differentiation. So this looks like a fairly trivial, simple things, but in principle, that is what which is causing. It is not the upgrading your all the operator to the general space operator. It's actually degrading all the spatial operator also as a simple parameter, and your field live in this, and then you have a Lagrangian density, and then you can do your field equation and all that thing. So that is one difference. But these all would be, whatever we are talking about quantum gravity would be only an approximation, because we don't have a full theory, and all of them will be using something similar when it comes to gravity. But there is another way of doing it. Another way of doing it is to not to do an approximation in the space-time of Minkowski. On the other hand, let's say, let me write down the metric GAB as a GAB, and into GAB0, which is unperturbed metric, and then a metric, a small quantity. Here you have an exact solution to Einstein's equation, and then the small perturbation here. So HAB here, magnitude, is a much smaller than 1 or a GAB 0. So you have a background metric which need not be Minkowski, and then it could have a curved space in the background instead of Minkowski, and then you have a field on that, and that is a way of doing what is you call as a quantum fields on the curved space-time. So that is another approach which people do take when it comes to studying the quantum fields on the curved space-time. So these two are approaches, but here you have a flat as your background, flat space as your background. In the another case, you have a curved space itself as a background, but the perturbation itself or the additional field which you are putting is treated in the linear order only. So that is a difference, but of course, mathematics would be very similar, except the gamma which we have taken for the background here, Minkowski is 0, but other case gamma would also come, and all that corresponding Einstein's equation would also come, or whatever modified field equation would also could come. Okay. Did that answer your question?
Yes, kind of. So we can treat this 8 as a field on different backgrounds.
Yes, yes. So that tensor field, how you give rise, whether it is a quantum nature or classical nature, it is up to you. So that is one more question overall I want to ask before Einstein's equation. Probably you guys have reached, but there is a underlying this thing. How well you guys are with the variational principle? You are all okay with the deriving the Lagrangian from Lagrange equation from the variational principle and all that thing?
So we have done this once in third year, but I think we need to revise.
Yeah, no, that would be nowhere enough if you are talking, because what we are talking is Einstein's equation to arrive from the what is known as a Hilbert-Einstein's action. That would involve a considerable calculation. Let me see how to do that maybe in the next coming week. So that is a part of syllabus that whether should be taken or not, I am thinking. But let me see. That involves a lot of doing variation with respect to tensor fields. If you have done field theory, you would have come across such calculations. Field theory, you are in fourth year. You have some of you have done field theory.
Yes, sir.
So there you have come across the Lagrangian, not Lagrangian, action principle for electromagnetic field or vector field and things like that.
Sir, I think that part is in QFT2 and that will be covered in some time. I mean, in the QFT2 course that we are having right now.
Okay, it is running in parallel. Okay, let us.
As in for this vector field. I mean, for scalar field, we have done it. For vector field and in QED, that part will come.
Yeah, no, scalar field is just like a classical mechanics Lagrangian, so that should not be too different. Okay, anyway, let us see. I'll keep that in mind. We might need some more central force problem that we will do when we handle the black hole, Schwarzschild black hole part. That whatever needed, we'll just brush along. Okay, any questions? Okay, any questions? Okay, if there are no questions, let me stop here.